African Affairs, I hope that's the right title I'm calling, said something about, the conflict between the Cameroon government and those people asserting an inalienable right. They call them secessionists, they call them all type of names, but that's not a name, that's not an attribution I'll give them. He said, you can never use war to win this fight. You have to talk to the people and find a solution to this problem. So if the US government, if the House of Senate, the most sacred place where laws emanate from the United States, if they can sit down and deliberate and accuse the Frenchman of doing, of bidding, of creating, of foiling this war in the Cameroons, then they are absolutely correct. If you listen, I think about a year ago, a French prime minister, or he was a candidate for the French, for the Italian, to be the Italian prime minister. I think I've forgotten his name. He actually accused France directly. The refugees coming from across the Sahara, coming into Italy and all that stuff, he laid that blame directly onto the French because it is their policies. You cannot come to a country, you are the executor, you are the legislator, and you are the judiciary. No, you cannot do that. You cannot do that, Frenchman, because you have created this havoc in Cameroon. And of course, we cannot just blame the Frenchman. You blame the people at the top of power because look, when Mr. Biya came to power, he changed the CNU to Rassemblement Démocratique du Peuple Cameroun. Why did he change it to that? Because there was something in the close to the 40s that was called the Rassemblement Démocratique du Peuple Africain. That was a French appellation. So what he did to cower to the Frenchman by changing the CNU and making it the Rassemblement Démocratique du Peuple Cameroun. So to buy the French, say, okay, look, I am here, I am bidding you, I will be here for you, come and take whatever you do. So when they write all those cooperation agreements filled with military contracts, and all that stuff, that they will protect you in case there is a war or whatever, like what happened in Ivory Coast. That's exactly what we have to go past that mentality. And until we get past that point, there is no way. So if the US government is telling the Frenchman that this is what they're doing, because they've seen French policy in Africa, there has never been decolonization in Africa. There has been recolonization in another form. They do everything. If you stick your head out there, they'll find every way to bring you down and kill you and eliminate you. And until the average man in Africa sees the Frenchman not as a partner, but as a competitor, they're coming to compete for your resources. If you get it at that point, then you say, okay, no, he has to be the best bidder, not coming to give you arms and all that stuff, and you take it and sit down and fuel the pockets of a few people and feel that this is how Cameroon will move. It will never go beyond that particular point.
But Barrister, some nationalists and Pan-Africanists are asking the question, for how long shall we continue pointing fingers at foreigners, pointing fingers at France and other countries for the things that are happening in the African countries, things happening in Cameroon, and we are pointing fingers at France and so on?
No, that's exactly what I just told you. I said, look, we cannot all blame this thing on France. At the top, it has to come from the top. As I said, when the president of Cameroon was met the president of Cameroon, what did he do? He changed the CNU, the Cameroon National Union, which was the original party, to Rassemblement Démocratique du Peuple Cameroun. Why would he change it? Why not bring something that's reflective of your country? He made it so that to cower to the French. And all those top ministers, all those top people around him, they were all educated. Most of them were educated in France. And they are only there to put in French mentality in that system. They're promoting neo-colonization. See, if you give me the opportunity to change the minds of people in Cameroon, let me tell you the one institution or one or two that I will scrap right away, and that would go away. The École Nationale d'Administration et Magistration, that is a perfect symbol of colonization. You take away that institution, you take away French power in Cameroon. That's a solution right there. You take away the gendarmerie, you take away French power in Cameroon. You inculcate the gendarmerie either into the military or into the police force. You take away that school of magistracy. That is an iconic symbol of colonization in Cameroon, in particular.
But so if you're asking, but these are national institutions. How are they?
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. National institutions. I'm sorry.
Yes, I said these are national institutions. How are they representatives of the colonial power?
No, because the curriculum right there is being tailored towards the, maintaining that influence there. Let me tell you, I don't know if we have time for this, but let me tell you, when I graduated from the University of Cameroon, Yaoundé, Cameroon, and I passed, again, if I had cowered to the Frenchman, I would have been a minister somewhere in Cameroon today. But let me tell you, when I passed the exams and I went for the interview, the orals, I went there and sat. The jury was made of, I think, about 7 or 8 black people, and there was one white person in the middle, and he was a Frenchman. And the first question he asked me, and that was the only question he asked me in French, he asked me, according to you, what do you understand by Bretton Woods? He asked me in French, and I asked him if I could answer this question in English, and he said yes. And I told him what Bretton Woods was. And of course, Bretton Woods is after the Second World War, where they met in the United States, in Massachusetts. That's where the IMF came up. That's where the African Development Bank, and that's how France-Afrique crept up, because they wanted to maintain their colonies and say, okay, this is civilization. They want to civilize these people. So they write this pact, this contract with you people that are not civilized, and that is the basis. That is where it is. So if you're telling me that that institution is a nationalist institution, then that is not correct. It is not proper. It is a vestige of colonialism. Take away that institution, we will get better schools. We can have better law schools. We can have better law schools when we graduate from the university. We can have better institutions, but not because the curriculum right there is tailored. Again, when I did not answer that question, that's how I failed to go to Enam. That's how I feel. I never regretted my decision right there. I never regretted it because I did not cower to the white man. Because he was the only person. When I was done after that orals, I asked if there was any other question. He said no, because he knew I wasn't for him. So until that mindset, we have to change. We have to change. The Frenchman cannot kill every African. We have to stand our ground and say, no, we have to move from point A to point B. We cannot dance on the same spot and expect a difference, that there will be a change.
Let's talk about what is happening in the United States of America, where you are. Post-election violence and protests coming from the camp of outgoing President Donald Trump. What can we pull out of what is happening there in the United States?
They've done it exactly the way we do it back in Africa and some other countries. And United States, it's a representative democracy. So you get voted to represent the people and not yourself and not your interest. But the difference in this particular situation is that the current leader of the White House thought, once you accede to power, everything is under you. You can use it the way you want, but that's not how American democracy is. Because if it is what it is, or what he thought it was, like the other day on the 6th of January, when those call them anarchists or how you want to call them, ascended on the Capitol and attacked that legislative body, it would have been different. They would have been, because they were armed, it would have been different. But a couple of hours after that, that body came back again into full session, and the president has made a mea culpa, something like that. But I don't think this is something that we can learn, because what we are learning from the current president, we are learning the bad thing, because that's not how democracy works.
That's the same United States that has imposed itself as a teacher of democracy to other countries around the world, notably African countries. And when we have this happening at this point in time, what can we pick out of that?
That is true. Again, this is like, it's never been like this before. I think the last time the Capitol was stormed the way it was done today, or somebody denies to give up power when he's been defeated at the ballot box, it's hundreds of years ago. So Mr. Trump, President Trump, he is one of a kind. I think this is one of a generation, and history will always quote him for what he's done. This is not representative of American democracy that we've grown to know. There's always been a peaceful transition of power. If you lose, you go to the courts. The legal system is there. It will protect you. They will give you, and there is a final verdict. When the Supreme Court or the courts make that decision, you are supposed to accept it, because the judges are impartial. That's how they're supposed to function, and that's how we've believed in them in this society. So we cannot really, if we learn something from what happened in the United States, we should know that if you try to assert yourself in power, the institutions, if they are supposed to work and they work properly, they would not let you do what happened. But if you look at, let me draw that parallel to Cameroon. The last elections that happened, well, the Professor Maurice Kamto and his party, they said they won the election. But what happened? They went to the courts. But what happens in the courts? The Chief Justice, I don't know if that's the right title in Cameroon, the Chief Justice in that particular setting, in that judicial setting, in that judicial council, he was, the way he applied the law, you realize that it was so one-sided. He took it was just a pure show. It was a pure show. You put people right there, they bring everybody assert their point of view, and in the end, you still decide for the person who put you there. But you realize in the Supreme Court, they threw away cases that came to that court in the United States here, and these were judges that were appointed by President Trump. If it was in Cameroon, you would say, okay, no, the president appointed me, he gave me this lifetime appointment, let me do it, let me do this for him, and you change it. No, the Supreme Court, the justices here in the United States, all 9 of them, they threw out the cases because there was no justification for that case to even get there, because the states had already trashed everything. So if we can learn something from this system, learn from the get-go that the Supreme Court intervened. They did not give power back to the president, because if they had taken on that case and even decided one of them for Mr. Trump, it would have been something different. So we have to build institutions. We should not build people. That's what we have to look on this as Cameroonians. You should not have the judicial system in Cameroon. Let me tell you, if you go to Cameroon, if you go to court and your client is granted bail, you go to the gendarmerie or the police station to take that person out, they will not let him out, because it is a military system that's running that country right now. It is not a pure democracy in Cameroon. That's what happens.
Barrister Aneneba Innocent Akufo, Cameroonian attorney and counselor at law in New York, human rights defender and major proponent of decolonization. We're going to end here, and you asked the question, who is orchestrating the happenings in the northwest and southwest regions of the country? We'll try to answer that question in the second part of this program, when we will receive Patti Asanga, who will be joining us from Germany. Thank you very much. Hello everyone, thank you for joining us on this edition of The Insight. Today we're going to be analyzing some recent happenings in the northwest and southwest regions of the country within the context of the more than 4-year-long armed conflict going on there. 4 soldiers and a civilian, the Momo regional delegate of communication, killed in an ambush not far from Bengui in the northwest region. 3 other persons wounded, enormous material damage recorded. The convoy of the senior division officer of the Momo division was attacked on the night of January 5th to 6th, 2021, while the prefect and other authorities were returning from the installation ceremony of the divisional officers of Njikwa and Andek. And about 48 hours after that incident, at least 4 elements of the National Armed Forces and 2 civilians were killed around the Matazam checkpoint in Santa Mezam division of the northwest region of the country. And this incident came following a night of gun battles in some parts of the town of Bamenda. And in the southwest region, a locally made explosive device was discovered by security and defense forces in Kumba. We'll also take a look at the post-election protests and violence in the United States of America. Our guest today, Barrister Aneneba Innocent Akufo, a Cameroonian attorney and counselor at law in New York, human rights defender and major proponent of decolonization. Thank you for joining us today, Barrister.
It was a pleasure, Mr. Babila. I'm getting on Equinox again.
What's your take about the recent happenings in the northwest and southwest regions of the country? First, the attack on the convoy of the senior divisional officer of the Momo division in the northwest region, and in that attack, as you already know, 5 persons died: a civilian, a journalist, regional delegate of communication for the Momo division, and 4 soldiers.
Yes, Mr. Babila, it's unfortunate, and our condolences, or my personal condolences to the families of those who lost their lives. And again, if society has gotten to a point where violence has become a catharsis, this is what you expect of people. We do, and I do personally condemn violence on both sides. Whether it's from the government or it's from people who are asserting their right in a society that they feel they belong into. So what happened when they went to install the officers in this region of the country, it's not something that was unexpected. This is things that happen because there is a genesis of something that has not been addressed yet. You know, rather than fixing what we're supposed to fix, we try to trench on what, you know, we think it's better for us. You know, Aristotle and Cicero said this is a hubris that we may never get by if we continue to do the same thing and expect a different result. So again, death is death. We don't want to lose human life because of power. And this is the excesses of power that we're seeing, whether it's in Cameroon, whether it's in other African countries, whether it's in the United States or where in the world. This is where the aristocracy, the oligarchs, feel that they've gotten all their grips in power, and they don't look at those people who are downtrodden, and they feel that they have a grip on what they can manifest as their portion of power. This is what happened. And this pornographic display of force by the government or by whoever is carrying guns in Cameroon or in the southern Cameroons, it's something that we have to look at the root cause. We cannot be putting our safety, we cannot be putting Band-Aid on something that is so egregious. We cannot move from, you know, from nowhere to nowhere, or from nowhere expecting that we're going to somewhere. If the basis is faulty, then of course, the fabric itself has to be dissolved. And how do you dissolve this? You go through a process. At some point, we Africans, we Cameroonians, you have to sit down and look in retrospect. What have we done wrong? We cannot keep digging because we have power and we feel that we would end up with the right solution. They would never be the same. We fail. Yes, sir.
Looking at the intensity of this other attack, the magnitude of this other attack, an armored car almost shattered into pieces, and so on. What can we read within the lines of this other incident that has taken away human lives in the northwest and southwest regions of the country in crisis for more than 4 years today?
And when we were growing up, this is not the type of violence that we saw. It has been espoused. This violence has been brought on the people by the regime. And what's the natural reaction when you get attacked? The only thing is you try to defend yourself. We can lay blame on both sides on this equation, but in the end, we have to look at ourselves in the mirror and say, who is benefiting from all this violence in Cameroon? Who is the progenitor? Who is actually orchestrating all this stuff? These guns are not made in Bamenda. These guns are not made in Douala. These guns are not made in Yaoundé or wherever. You know, these guns have been imported from the West or whichever part of the world to kill you Africans. I don't know when we will see this and realize that we are beating the white man's war in all this stuff, because you are fueling full employment outside of Cameroon by buying these guns from Western countries, and they will be happy to sell you these guns. And how do these guns get into you, to you guys? Because you sign exorbitant contracts with them that they will protect you by getting your resources. And they bring these guns, and you are championing, thinking that you're trying to champion a cause for the country. You are not. You are working for the white man. That is exactly what you're doing. This is another level of slavery that we've gotten ourselves into. And until the average Cameroonian sees the difference between this and the original form of slavery, the guns, the ammunition will flow. People will become very, very creative, make their own type of devices, whether it is the government or the people who are asserting their rights of freedom in a society that they feel they belong to, which is their society. These things will always continue until we find a perfect solution. We have to build a land that we leave behind for our children to look into and say, this is what my forebears did for us. We cannot be having this pro-West mentality, trying to keep, colonialism at bay in Cameroon and think that you would succeed. If you look at the power structure in Cameroon, if I might delve into that, if you look at the power structure in Cameroon, they are all people from the 60s. And when I mean 60s, not that they were born in the 60s. These were people who graduated or did stuff in the 60s that they've moved this. The French keep them there and the West keep these people there just because they want to maintain that colonial mentality. And until we see past that, until we go past that, we will be where we are today. The war that's been going on for 4 years will go for longer than that. And this is not something that we wish as a people, because you are killing your brothers and sisters because the white man is telling you to do that. Until you see that, until we get past that mentality in our mind, we'll keep doing the same thing and more ammunition will flow. People will become more creative. Devices will be created because that's just the human mind. Because if Emile Durkheim, a French sociologist, looked at the pathology of the human body and reflected that on society and saw that the way the body works, it's exactly how society has to work, and came up with the theory of anomie, which means, society get into that catharsis where it becomes so complex, so convoluted, and leaders are no longer accountable to the people. And at some point, society devolves and people might be committing suicide because the society that they hope for is no longer able to assist them overcome their problems. And this is exactly what we are seeing in Cameroon.
These incidents are coming after the putting in place of regional executives within the context of the implementation of the new decentralization code, with the special status for the northwest and southwest regions of the country. The regional assembly and the house of chiefs are progressively being put in place in those two regions. At the same time these incidents are occurring, what are the signals that can be read within the context of these incidents happening? Is it does that mean that what government is doing so far is not appeasing the people, is not bringing down the tension, is not solving the problem?
It is not, Mr. Babila. Exactly, the government of Cameroon is doing the opposite. The government of Cameroon is trying to maintain the status quo, because at one point I had asked you guys, who gave somebody the right to give some other person a special status when we were co-equal partners in a union that has never actually worked? You cannot be poking your hand or your finger into somebody's eye and feel that you will blind that eye and that eye will never see, or the other eye will stay, aloof and never react. This is exactly what's going on. You cannot say that there is a special status. You're doing a regional, decentralization of your government, when the central power, the central authority of that government, it is still in Yaoundé. Look, this is, if you look at that law they call Ohada, this is an extension of French influence in Africa. If you look at the House of Chiefs that they're trying to create, or whatever they're trying to create, to be candid, I've not had the time to read the recent decentralization laws, because I know exactly what the mentality would be when these people try to craft their law. They take from the French and try to push it onto the people. Because in the eastern part of Cameroon, the East Cameroon, the former, the French-speaking Cameroon, their chiefs and all those people, they were part of the administration. That's not how the chiefs were in the West Cameroon. They might have had, some vestiges of administration in their strain of or line of thought. But again, These were not people, these were people that were answerable to their ancestry and their people, not to the white people, not to the colonialists. And at this point where they've brought the House of, decentralized, and brought the House of Chiefs and all that stuff, we are pandering to French legal system, because they wrote the laws in like the Ohada. That's something that the Frenchman crafted in their parliament and gave you guys as an economic legal system that you should inculcate into your own legal system. It wasn't voted in your parliament. Why would you do that? I mean, more than 60 years after independence, you still depend on the Frenchman. It's horrible. It is something that we should not accept. We have smart Cameroonians, we have smart Africans who can sit at the table and design laws that fit our reality, not the Frenchman's reality, not the American's reality, and not the European reality. Something that reflects our upbringing and how we are, who as a people. As if we don't get past that, if we never go past that, we will still be doing exactly what we are doing. And all this stuff about decentralization, for me, it's a hogwash. It is just because power is still in Yaoundé. It is still the same people that are doing the same stuff, because there is no devolution here. So if again,
but it's talking about who gave the right to who to give a special status to the other. This is something that is enshrined in the constitution of the country, and is that constitution that is being implemented today.
Well, again, laws, we always say that the history of a country is written by somebody who is victorious, always write the history of the country. It doesn't necessarily mean that that history is correct. Because if you're looking at the Constitution, who writes the Constitution? If you look at, there was an original Constitution in 1961. Look at that Constitution, what did it say? After that, you've got different versions of the Constitution until what we have today. At some point, we had something that could be reflective of this country, but they decided not to implement that Constitution. If you ask me why, I would not tell you, because I wasn't part of the process. They would say, the laws are written by man. The current Constitution, that absolutely stamps any little vestige of freedom on the people. Everything you do, if you want to manifest your right, your inalienable right as a Cameroonian, or somebody from the southern Cameroons, what they would do is they would take you and charge you for terrorism. Those are not laws that you write for people. Those are laws that you write for a society that's in decay, because you try to cling to power. You do everything within your hubris to keep yourself in power by writing all those types of laws. So for me, the Constitution that you say gave them the power to do what they're doing, for me it is, it was written by whom? By the same people who are trying to oppress you, who are actually oppressing you. So you cannot tell me that there is a Constitution in Cameroon. The Constitution is a document, it's a living document, that is true. But a Constitution that gives absolute power to a monarch, the president of the country, that is no Constitution. Because that document is supposed to belong to the people and not to one person. Because everything that you do in that Constitution, the president of Cameroon, Mr. Paul Biya, if he might just get up one day and issue a presidential decree which overrides the entire Constitution. Is that a Constitution? That is not a Constitution. So you cannot, on the basis of that document, which is faulty, it is something called the tree of, the fruit of the poisonous tree in legal parlance. So if the root is faulty, then every fruit that comes out of that tree itself is faulty. So the Constitution it's a root from the poisonous tree. You should just forget about it.
Looking at what's been happening and what government has been doing, what is your opinion about the future, the coming months, the coming years, the northwest and southwest regions of the country with regards to what government is doing so far to bring down the tensions, to put an end to the atrocities being committed in those two regions, and the happenings which are in sharp contrast to what government is aiming at, the objectives of government, that is peace, restoring peace and normalcy, but that peace is not forthcoming because of the incidents that continue to happen, the killings, the destruction of properties, explosives here and there, soldiers and civilians going down?
Our problems are despair and desperation in Cameroon and most African countries, as I can say. Saying that, what's the solution to these problems? You see, I listened to somebody say that, this thing is relative. We've come to a point of normalcy, relative from where we were 4 years ago, when you could not even stick your nose out of the out of your house. It's relative. Now we can, with armored cars, with guides from gendarmes and police officers, you can walk from point A to point B. For me, that is not relative. That is not normalcy. That's chaos. That's anomie, as Emile Durkheim said. And another French guy, André Gide, when he traveled to Africa and came back to France and wrote Voyage au Congo, in his book said, when the average person is downtrodden and oppressed, at some point in that society, the oppressed will rise up, and in the latent fertility of that fallow class, and there will be no way to hold them down. So that the solution to all our problems in Africa, and in Cameroon in particular, because I know the country, is you have to have the right mindset. You have to have the right people in power. Some people should not feel that they are entitled. They are the ones who are supposed to be the rulers of Cameroon. No, they are not. Whether you come from a particular tribe, this is not a tribal warfare that we're getting into. This is society as an organ. It's an organic structure, and everybody has to participate in that society. So if you bring a particular tribe to be the ones that write the laws and do everything of that particular country, it will always reflect their own dispensation about society. That's what it's going to be. Because again, as I said, this is a colonial mentality. These people are there to serve the colonial interest. And as long as that particular mentality is enshrouded within themselves, then we are not getting out of this, because the 4 years will just keep on going. And as I said, people get perfect. They get themselves perfected with time. When the war was declared on the other part of the country, they were coming out with knives and 10 guns. But today, you see explosives flying out there. It's not something we support. It is not something that we should conjure or tolerate in our society. We want peace. Peace should flow, but speak to the right people. Even if it means going back to Kondenge prison, where you have all the detainees, all those people for basically exercising a basic human right. Go out there, get those people and say, okay, this is a symbolic gesture. Let's sit down and talk, find a solution to this problem. I'm telling you, you cannot sit on the mountaintop of your desires and just sit down there and feel that everybody should listen to you. No, go to those people. They are part of your society. These people, they are not enemies. They are not foreigners. They are part of that system, that structure. So you have to involve the right people, the right people with the right mentality, and be able to accept that, somebody else's perspective, it's something positive for that society. Because as long as you keep revolving around the same people, because if you look at Mr. Biya's cabinet, these are people, none of them is under 60, and these are people that have stayed with him for the longest time. What do you expect of those people? They will keep doing the same thing. Professor Joseph Owona, Mr. Maurice Kamto, Professor Kamto, these are the same people. They will keep writing the same laws. You give them the opportunity to do one thing. The first place they go to France. Why do they go to consult with the Frenchman? The Frenchman is not part of Cameroon. Their time is come and gone. Until we see that part and go beyond that part, we will still doing the same thing.
All right, Barrister, we're going to talk about what France can do in the light of the recent statements from